Welcome, joyful creators and Call the Midwife friends. Welcome to Funday Monday, part 2 of the Blocks in Love baby blanket. Today we are going to start our second granny square using the Midwife Classic stitch, and you will need the color of yarn that you are going to make that square in, and you need the yarn that you're going to use as the border around that square. And then you need your hook. We are using a J 6.0 millimeter hook. And again, I'm using a Leither hook. I will have that link for those hooks in the description box below. And you'll need a pair of scissors and a darning needle. And of course, as always, we love to keep our favorite and best tool hydrated and moisturized. So you need a little bit of lotion to do that. And when you're ready, we're going to pause the video and I'm going to clear off my craft table, and if you'll get all of your items together and ready, I'll meet you over at the craft table. I'm going to go ahead and get my blue yarn on my hook ready to make our foundation chain. So when you have your blue yarn ready, I've gone ahead and created a slip knot and attached it to my hook, and we need to create a foundation chain of 28. So let's go ahead and create a foundation chain of 28. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28. When we have our chain of 28, we are going to start off with a double crochet in the 7th chain from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we're going to come right in here and make a double crochet. And after we've made that double crochet, so what we have is we have our first double crochet here. We have a chain 2 that creates a spacer for us. And then we have a double crochet here. We're going to chain 1. We're going to skip this next stitch, and in this next stitch we're going to work a double crochet. And we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to work a double crochet into the next stitch. Let me get under all those loops. There we go. And we're just going to repeat this all the way down until we get to the last 3 stitches. And I'm going to work all of this with you in this tutorial, because going forward, the next time we make one of these granny squares with the classic, you'll just have written pattern in the tutorial, but you'll always have this first one to come back to. So I'm just going to work the whole granny square with you. So right now we're working a double crochet, chaining 1, skipping a stitch, and working a double crochet into the next stitch. And we're just going to continue doing this all the way down till we get to the last 3 stitches remaining. And it'll get a little bit easier when you have something to hold on to. As with any project, it just takes a minute to get going because you don't have anything to hold on to when you're working in your foundation chain. Now this is going to be the last double crochet. All right, now we have 3 stitches remaining. So normally we were chaining 1, but we want to create a spacer just like we did at the beginning over here. So we're going to chain 2, 1, 2. And to create that spacer, we're going to skip the next 2 chains, and in this very last one, we are going to work a double crochet. And this completes our first row. And so let me show you what we have. So on the end here, we have these spacers. So the actual block, so to speak, is inside of those spacers. And you'll see them a little bit better as we go forward. Here is a sample that I worked up that you can kind of see what we're going to create today. This is what we're actually going to create, and then we'll have this white border going around it. Okay? So we're going to chain 4 to get ready to start row 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn your work. And we're going to skip these first 2 chains here to create our spacer. And we're going to work a double crochet into this first double crochet. So after you've made that first double crochet, you can kind of see how you're creating that spacer block. Okay? And again, it'll take more shape once the next row is added. So we're going to do double crochets all the way across this row. So we have 19 double crochets. So our next double crochet is going to be worked into this chain 1 space. Now, you can make your double crochet into the actual space, but I'm choosing to do mine in the chain 1 stitch. The difference between doing it in the stitch or the space, if you do it in the stitch, it ends up giving your project a much cleaner look than if you were to actually do it in the space. So if you want, you could do one of these blocks doing the stitches in the space and then one in the actual stitches, and see which one you personally, excuse me, I was trying to say personal and prefer at the same time, like better. But I have found that I get such a cleaner pattern when I actually go into the stitch. And I know on this first row it's kind of hard getting into that chain 1 stitch, but it is so, to me, worth the effort because, again, the product just comes out with a much cleaner and sharper edge, and the pattern just looks so much better. But that's my preference. You may not see a difference, so you do what you feel more comfortable with. But for this tutorial, we will work in the actual chain 1 stitch versus the space. And so we're literally just working double crochets all the way across this row in each double crochet and chain 1 space. And when we're done, we'll have a total of 19 double crochets inside the spacers. And then we're going to do the same thing we did on row 1. When we get to the end and we have 3 chains left, we're going to chain 2, skip 2 stitches, and work a double crochet into that last double crochet. Now when I go to work in my chain 1 spaces, as I get further into this granny square, it will not be as difficult. I am still working in the beginning here with not much of a project to hang on to. Plus, I do tend to crochet a little bit with a tighter tension. And so for me, that's why it's taken me just a few minutes to get into that stitch, but we are moving along. We're almost to the end here. Looks like I have 2 more to go. And my last one. All right, so we're just going to count and make sure. I'm going to use this hook here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And that's what we should have. So now to create our spacer, we're going to chain 2, and we're going to skip the next 2 stitches and work a double crochet into the very last double crochet, and that will end row 2. We're going to chain 4. Now rows 3, 4, and 5 are going to create our classic midwife stitch. Turn our work, and we're going to skip these first 2 chains to create a spacer. Again, this chain 4 counts as a double crochet and then a chain 2. Normally when you go to chain at the beginning of a row to work a double crochet, you chain 3, 2 for the double crochet and 1 for the row height. But we are creating a double crochet just like we did on this one, and then a chain 2 to create a spacer. So that's why we do a chain 4. So let's go into this first double crochet, and we're going to make a double crochet. And we want 8 double crochets total. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now we're going to start on our pattern, so we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. We're going to skip the next 3 stitches, so 1, 2, 3, and in this next one we're going to work a double crochet. We want our granny square to be symmetrical, so now we're going to need a total of 8 double crochets. So we just did the first one. Now we've got 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. After you have your last double crochet of your 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, we're going to chain 2 to create our spacer on the end. And we're going to skip these first 2 chains, or these next 2 chains, 1, 2, and in this very last one we're going to work a double crochet. And that completes row 3 and the first row of our classic midwife pattern. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and now we're going to start the next row. We're going to skip these 2 chains to create our spacer and work a double crochet into this first double crochet, and we need a total of 6. So that's 1. So this one's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, now we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to work a single crochet into this third chain of the chain 3. We're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to skip the next 2 double crochets, and in the next one we're going to work a double crochet, and to keep it symmetrical we're going to work 6 double crochets total. So that was 1, this makes 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And as you can tell, that finishes off the block. We're going to chain 2 for our spacer, 1, 2, and we're going to skip these next 2 chains, and then the top of this double crochet, we're going to work a double crochet. And that finishes our 4th row. Chain 4 and turn your work. And now we're going to do row 5. Row 5 is a repeat of row 3. So we're going to skip these first 2 chains to create a spacer, work a double crochet into this first double crochet, and we need 8. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we need 2 more. So we're going to work double crochets into these first 2 chains of our chain 4 from the previous row. So 7 and 8. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to work a double crochet, and we're going to do 2 of them into the end of this chain 4. So we're going to skip these first 2 chains of our chain 4, and then the last 2 chains of our chain 4, we're going to work a double crochet. So it is symmetrical with the other end of this row. And again, we need a total of 8, so that makes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8. And that finishes that block. So we're going to chain 2 to create our spacer, 1, 2, skip these 2, and work a double crochet into this end stitch. And we've completed our first pattern. 1, chaining 4, 2, 3, 4, and turning our work. Now, I'm going to put that out of the way for a minute and bring my sample back in. So this is where we're at. We've just finished this row right here. Okay, so now we're going to put this top row that actually completes this section. And we're getting ready to do 3 rows of 19, just like we did over here on row 2. And we're going to do this 3 times. This kind of caps off our block here, so to speak. We're going to do another row that's going to create like the middle of our granny square. Oh, it's this row right here, sorry. And then this row here starts the next block, so to speak. So we have 2 blocks within our granny square and this 1 row of 19 that's going to separate them. So just giving you kind of more of a visual of that square that we're creating. So after you've chained 4 and turned your work, we're going to work a double crochet into this first double crochet after we skip the 2 chains to create that spacer. And then we are just working double crochets all the way across, so we have 19. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and our next 3 double crochets are going to be made into this chain 3 here that we have. Okay, so this will be number 9. And again, you can do it in the space if you prefer, but it will give it a much cleaner and sharper look if you actually do it in the stitch. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19 into this last one before the spacer. And again, to create the spacer, we're going to chain 2, and we're going to skip these next 2 chains right here, and then the top of this double crochet, we're going to do a double crochet and chain 4, 1, 2, 3, whoops, yarn came off my hook. All right, and 4, and turn your work. And now we're just going to repeat the row we just did, working the 19 double crochets across 2 more times. So go ahead and do that. Don't forget, when you get to the end of your 19th, you're going to chain 2, skip 2, and work a double crochet into the end double crochet, chain 4, and then repeat that row again. So go ahead and work the next 2 rows, and then I will meet back up with you and we'll get ready to work row 9 together. After you've worked your 3 rows of 19, we are going to start the next block of our classic midwife stitch. So we're going to skip these 2 chains to create our spacer after we've chained our 4 to start the row, and we're going to work 8 double crochets, starting with 1 double crochet in this first double crochet, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. We're going to skip the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3. And this next one, we're going to work a double crochet, and we need 8. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We're going to chain 2 for our spacer, skip these next 2 chains, and in the top of this double crochet, we are going to work a double crochet. And now we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, turn our work, and now to start the next row of our classic stitch, and we're going to work a double crochet into this first double crochet, and we need a total of 6. So that's 1 and 2, 3, and 4, and 5 and 6. Now we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're going to work a single crochet into this third chain of our chain 3. And chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And keeping it symmetrical, we're going to skip these next 2 double crochets and work a double crochet into these last 6 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Chain 2 to create the spacer. 1, 2. And we're going to skip these 2 chains and go into the top of this double crochet and work a double crochet. And that ends that row. And this is our pattern so far. We're going to chain 4 and then turn 1, 2. I got a piece of my hair. There we go. It happens. 3, 4. All right. And just like we did on this row, we're going to repeat it. We're going to skip these 2 chains to create a spacer, work a double crochet in this first double crochet, and we need 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and just like we did below, we're going to work 7 and 8 into these first 2 chains of this chain 4. 7 and 8. And now we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to work our next double crochet into this the last 2 chains of this chain 4. So we're going to go right in there and work 1 double crochet, go into this last chain of the chain 4 and work our second double crochet, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We're going to chain 2 for our spacer, and we're going to skip these next 2 chains, and in the top of this double crochet work a double crochet. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to turn our work. And as you can see, we technically have now both of our classic patterns completed. We have 2 more rows to finish off the block before we start adding the border. This next row, we're going to add another row of our 19 double crochets. So we're going to skip these 2 chains to create a spacer, come into this next or first double crochet to make a double crochet, and we're going to make 19 double crochets across. And I'm just working across the row. And again, I'm going to make 3 of my double crochets into this chain 3 space, or the stitches. I'm actually doing mine in the stitches. And then just continue across, working in the double crochets until we have 19 and finish off the block. And of course, when we get to the very end and we have those 3 stitches remaining to create the spacer, we will chain 2, skip 2 chains, and then work a double crochet into that last double crochet. And I'm now working my 19th double crochet. So I'm going to chain 2 for my spacer and skip my 2 chains and work my double crochet in the end here. And chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, turn my work, and now we're ready for the last row. And the last row of this granny square is going to be worked just like this, so that it will match up here as it does all the way around. And again, to do that, we're going to skip these first 2 chains to create our spacer, work a double crochet into this first double crochet, and then we're going to chain 1, we're going to skip 1, work a double crochet into the next stitch, chain 1, skip 1, work a double crochet into the next stitch, chain 1, skip this stitch, work a double crochet into the next, and we're just going to continue repeating this all the way across the row until we get down to the last 3 remaining stitches. Chain 1, skip a stitch, work a double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, work a double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, and then this is my last double crochet. And then I'm going to chain 2 for the spacer, and like we have been, I'm going to skip those 2 chains and work a double crochet into this last double crochet. And this has actually completed the block of our granny square. So I'm going to go ahead and fasten off and trim me a little tail for sewing in. And I want you to go ahead, pause the video, weave both your end tails in. I did not work mine in as I went since I was going to have so many spaces. So I will just weave mine up and weave them into these double crochets that run on this row here above the one with all the spaces. So go ahead, pause the video, work in your tails, get your border yarn ready, and meet me back and we'll get started on our border. So to start our border, really you can pick any corner. It doesn't matter which corner you start with. So pick a corner and go into the space, which would be the last spacer of that corner, and join your yarn. And I've just got a slip knot, and I'm going to pull that through the space. And we need to start with a chain 3. So I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. That's going to count as a double crochet. Work a double crochet into that same corner space there. I'm not going to refer to it as a spacer anymore. I'm going to refer to it as a corner space. Chain 2, 1, 2, and now we're going to work 2 more double crochets right into that corner space, so that in the end we'll have 2 double crochets, a chain 2, and then 2 double crochets. So 4 double crochets total and a chain 2 space, so that it looks just like this. Oops, let me get back on camera. Sorry about that. Chain 2, 1, 2. We're going to completely skip this spacer right here, and we're going to come into this next spacer and work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and we're going to skip this space and come to the next one and work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to chain 2, 1, 2. We're going to skip the next space, and we're going to work 3 double crochets into the next. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, skip the next space, and into the next one, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, skip the next space and into the next space, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, and skip the next space, and that brings us to the next corner. Do 2 double crochets. 1, 2, chain 2, 1, 2, and work 2 more double crochets in the same space. 1, 2. So that it looks like that. And this is our granny square so far. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2. We're going to skip this next space, and in the next one we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Chain 2. Skip the next space, and in the next we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2. Skip the next space, and in the next one we're going to work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip the next space, and in the next one work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, and we're going to skip the next space, and it brings us to the next corner. So we're going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 more double crochets all in that corner stitch. Once you have worked your 2 double crochets and your chain 2 and 2 more double crochets in that corner stitch, you're going to chain 2. We're going to skip the next space, and in the next one we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2. Skip the next space, and in the next space work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2. Skip the next space, and in the next space work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2. Skip the next space, and in the next one work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2. And skip the next space, and in the next one work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2. Skip the next space, and it brings us to the next corner space. So we're going to work our 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets in that same corner space. Once you have worked your 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets in that corner space, you're going to chain 2. We're going to skip the next space, and in the next one we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Chain 2, 1, 2. Skip this next space, and in the next space we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Chain 2. Skip this space, and in the next one work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Chain 2. Skip this space, and in the next space work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Chain 2. Skip the next space, and then as you can see we're back at our original corner. So we are going to slip stitch into the top of this chain 3. We're going to slip stitch into the top of this next double crochet, and we're going to slip stitch into the chain 2 space. Now we're going to chain 3, and that's going to count as a double crochet. And we are going to do exactly what we just did in this last round of our granny square one more time. So I'm going to get you started, and then I'm going to let you finish it on your own. So we've got our chain 3, which counts as our first double crochet in this corner. So we're going to work another double crochet, so we have 2. Then we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and we're going to work 2 more double crochets into that corner space. 1, 2. Okay, just like that. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2. We're going to skip these 2 double crochets right here, and into this first space right here we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. We're going to chain 2. We're going to skip these 3 double crochets, and we're going to work 3 double crochets into the next space. 1, 2, 3. Chain 2, 1, 2. And you're going to keep working around. After you chain 2, you'll skip your 3 double crochets. Work 3 double crochets in the next space. Chain 2, skip the 3 double crochets, and work your 3 double crochets into the next space. All the way around to the corner. When you get in the corner, you're going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, chain 2. Skip over until you get to your spaces, and you're going to continue working 3 double crochets in each space around until you come all the way back to the beginning. When you get to the beginning and you've done your chain 2, you'll skip these next 2 double crochets and you'll join with a slip stitch in the top of your chain 3 where you'll fasten off, and I will meet back up with you there. So here is our finished granny square, and voila! Now, going forward, we're just going to keep putting this in our puff heart aside. We have 2 more granny squares we're going to make, and then we're going to put them together to form our blanket. So far, we have, trying to get this where you can see it. We have so far created 1 puff heart granny square. We have created now today our classic. Next week we'll come together and create a granny square with our butterfly, and then the next week we'll come together and create our granny square with the dragonfly, and then we'll create 1 more heart puff stitch, and then I'll have a tutorial that will show you how to put all these together. And then at that point you'll have the gist of how to finish the blanket if you choose to work ahead to finish it and start another one of the other midwife blankets we have going. It is entirely up to you, or you can just keep doing your squares with me week to week until this blanket is finished. That is your choice. Well, thank you for joining me for this Funday Monday of part 2 of the Blocks of Love midwife blanket. And until next time, be joyful, stay crafty in your own way, make your own joyful creations. I'll see you again soon.